Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
So I will go ahead and share my screen. All right. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining. I just have a few brief slides about PDS Vision, who we are, what we do, and then we'll dive right into the presentation from Bill. So PDS Vision is a certified PTC software services provider. We specialize in Creo, Windchill, complete suite of PTC software solutions. We are the first global reseller and preferred services provider for PTC. We also have a number of solutions that we develop aside from PTC software that we offer to our clients to help support their design and manufacturing. So we hold nearly every certification with PTC. We're certified software providers, services providers. We offer consulting and implementation services. We manage multiple training centers throughout the US and abroad. Also offer our own Windchill cloud offering and allow access to our expansive expertise through our help desk. We also manage the Chicago PTC user group, which we're looking at potentially holding a new event coming up at some point this year. So some exciting news about PDS Vision North America. So Boundary Systems has, many of you might know us as Boundary Systems. We joined the PDS Vision group of companies at the end of 2018. We recently had acquisitions in the past year of both Sconce and Boston Engineering. So now Boundary Systems, Boston Engineering, and Sconce are all joined under one roof, PDS Vision North America. And we're excited to be able to offer, an extended amount of expertise with the joining of technical experts from each of those companies. We are going to be hosting a free to attend IoT event coming up in Chicago at the end of April. So April 27th, we're going to have our mini factory on site where everybody will be able to interact and see how the functionality behind ThingWorx using Kepware to connect to ThingWorx with the mini factory, how all that works, and be able to get some hands-on experience with the product. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I can share a link with more details and registration with Deb so that she can share it with the group. And with that, I will pass it over to Bill. So Bill is one of our leading CAD technical specialists. He's going to be talking about surfacing using Creo and sub-D modeling with Freestyle.
Thanks a lot, Scott. And thanks, group, for coming on and joining. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. So we are going to get into some fun stuff here with surfacing. So the idea is that we cover Freestyle and the Interactive Surface Design Extension, also known as ISDX. We'll do a brief introduction of myself. And we'll also take a look at the Design Exploration Extension, which is also very good when you're going through these different versions of your design when the model is evolving. Of course, again, we'll go into the freestyle modeling and sculpting, and we'll also take a look at sharing that geometry. So, once you design something in freestyle, just take a look at publishing that geometry and copying it into a part, for example, to start refining that. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on here. So there's a picture of my son. Again, my name is Bill. Right now, I'm currently the manager of the help desk, but I do have a background in ID.
I think you need to share your screen still.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was here. Didn't kick into the right one, I guess. My apologies for that. Let's pick that one. How's
There we
that,
go.
Scott?
Much
Okay,
better.
perfect. Yeah, so there's a picture of my son and myself right there. So this is the PDS Vision North America concept car Creo model. So this was developed by myself, but we are going to use this car model for the creation of material for workshops, potentially training in the future, presentations, a whole bunch of stuff. But this is the model developed within Freestyle. Okay, here's a rendering of it within Keyshot. So what's really nice is I have the plugin in Creo. So once I get the design and Freestyle completed and I trim it out the way that I want, I could add the materials in Keyshot and give it this realistic look that you see here. All right, so we're going to cover just kind of like the basics of starting off a design in Freestyle. So you can kind of see here the development process of those designs that you're going to create in Freestyle, where you're going to start off with a primitive shape. In this case, I started off with a cube. You could also start off with a plane or a spherical shape. And you can see from the left image to the right, I started off with that cube. I kind of like pushed and pulled and sculpted. And then in the right image, I kind of started to get the overall shape that I was thinking about in the beginning stages of the roof of the vehicle and also the window area. All right. Then it starts to get fleshed out even more and it starts to evolve in shape. So it's called Freestyle for a reason, because just like you've heard about the freestyle singing and rapping, right? That it's kind of like this fluid, intuitive thing where you're just kind of like trying to iterate and model kind of off the cuff. So there's the next stage there to the left, where kind of like started to get an idea of what the front end, the rear of the vehicle is going to look like, and the windows on the right side there. And then you can see that I sculpt it further, and the design gets more and more fleshed out as I go through the pushing and pulling and modifying of the surfaces. And that's the finished one there to the right. Okay. So in Freestyle, the idea is, again, that you start off with this primitive shape, in this case, a cube, and I can select the face. So in that top left image, we have the cube, and I grab that top face and I extruded it, and that allowed me to grow the shape, to elongate it. And then I could also translate it with the arrows, rotate it with the drag handles. And then I'm adding even more geometry there on the right side, adding another face there. So this is just an example of how quickly you can modify the shape of your mesh inside Freestyle. So the image there to the right, we've selected the surfaces, or the image to the left, we selected the surfaces, and on the right, all we did was take that right drag handle and move it to the right, and we just bumped out that bottom part of the vehicle, the rear part of the vehicle there. So really easy, select, drag, and we just change the shape, right? So we know that typically, what we would do is, whether it was in the the ISDX feature or just using curves and blends within Creo, we would create those curves first, create our patches between them with the boundary blend, then modify those curves to modify the shape. But in here, you're literally just selecting and you're dragging. Okay, and here's another example there in that door area of the vehicle where we've selected a face on the left, in the left image there, and in the right image, we're using those drag handles again to kind of push that inward to modify the shape there. So what's nice too is that once you've completed the shape in Freestyle, you can use those surfaces, right? So if I want to, I can say, hey, you know what? I want to trim out that vehicle in the shape of the door there. And then I want to publish it, so you can trim out the different parts of the vehicle or whatever it is that you're creating. And then if you want to modify that in a different part, for example, in this part, we call it door, and publish that geometry out, and then go back and then go into that part, that new part, and copy that geometry into the part. So as you can imagine, it will inherit the original geometry from that Freestyle part. So, at some point along the design development process, you may want to break that link, the associativity between this part here and the original one. But at the top, you can see that we copied in that published geometry, and we got it from the footer there of the original model in the bottom left. All right. So once we've shared that geometry, you can see that we can copy those curves from the freestyle mesh. So that copy geometry that you see there on the left side is what we use to get the boundary curves of the door. And then once we have that, I can then take it to ISDX if I want and flesh out that door even more there as well, okay? So that's what I have right now, and I'm going to move into the demo to show you kind of how that's done. All right, so this is the CAD model of the vehicle right here that you can see. And also we have this design exploration session tree, and this is really nice because it can kind of get annoying to do a hard save on different versions of a model. So you can see I've got about 44 ones right here. I have the original one. If I go to the checkpoint 2, activate that, click OK, right? That's what I started with. So I started off with that cube in freestyle. And then if I just go down the line here and activate these different checkpoints, you can kind of start to see how that shape is evolving throughout the design process here. There's another version of it. I'll just go to the last one here and activate that one. It's going to take some time here. So what's nice about this is that it gives you this free form environment as far as, you're not having to save different versions of the model. All the versions that you've been working on are contained within this one part file. And it really gives you this more organic, free-flowing approach to developing the part. And it's easy to kind of look at where you started, and where you ended up. And then if you end up saying, hey, you know what, this product is finished, but there's a version of the vehicle where I like the body even more back here somewhere, you can just go back to that checkpoint and start working from there again. So it's flexible that way. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right into freestyle and show you around there. Okay. I'm going to go back into the original checkpoint here. Checkpoint 2. Okay, so there's the cube, and that comes from this freestyle feature. Edit definition on that. So this is the freestyle environment, pretty simple. We have our ribbon at the top, and we also have the freestyle tree down here to the left. So what you're going to do is you're going to start off with these primitive shapes, like I mentioned. So in the shapes group, there's the sphere, cylinder, torus there, and we also have the cube. So in this case, I selected my cube, and I start off with that. And notice right here that when I hover my mouse cursor over this geometry, it allows me to select different parts of the geometry, right? So there's the face, there's the edge, and then the vertices here as well, right? And also notice I get these drag handles where I can translate the vertice, for example, select the face, rotate that face, spin it around, right? So we're used to, creating sketches, modifying these dimensions, and that kind of thing. So this, for people that haven't used it before, it is a different way of working. But once you start playing around with it for a couple of weeks, you'll start to catch on. So this is the original shape right here. So it's pretty intuitive and responsive as well. So if I select that face, I can drag that face out, for example. I can also extrude it. So if I want to add geometry to this, I can right click and say, create and extrude. And now you can see we've just added more geometry and we've subdivided the model even further. I can subdivide it by selecting an edge as well, right? So there's extrusion, but I can also split the model further and subdivide it by grabbing an edge, right clicking and saying split. So I can split with one loop, 2 loops, 3 and 4 in this case. I'll grab 2. So now you can see we've just subdivided that. So now I have more geometry to work with to modify the shape of this. So I can grab that face there and I can pull that up and see how easily I can start to modify that shape. And I can split this side as well, right there. And I may even want to split it in this area. So I can grab that edge, subdivide it. You know, and here's where I can start grabbing geometry. I can just grab these faces and start pulling that outwards, right? Now there is a mirror feature as well. So what I can do is, you know, let's turn on my datum planes, right? I can grab one side of these vertices here, okay? Then up in the ribbon, there's a mirror feature. I can select that and say, hey, you know what? I want to mirror about this right plane. So now that I've done that, I only have to work on one side of the model, which really saves time. It's a lot better than having to try to mirror yourself manually, you know, one side or the other. That would just take too long and that would be too hard, right? So in this case, now I can grab these faces and start pulling that out, start getting the shape that I want, okay? I can grab these as well, like that. And then pull the back. I might want to subdivide this. There's also a tool where I can basically draw an edge in here. So there's the create edge between vertices. I can grab a point and I can then connect between each one of the edges here with the edge that I'm creating and then complete that. And now I can take this guy here if I wanted to, take these faces and I can pull that out, right? So you can see here that you can quickly start to play around with the design ideas that you have for a vehicle, for example, or something. So I can grab this one and pull that out, right? What I also like about this is the ability to connect and join geometry. So for example, if I grab this face and extrude it upwards, and maybe grab this one, subdivide that, and grab this face and extrude that, and maybe I'll just split these here. So let's subdivide that. Okay, so now if I wanted to join geometry, for example, from this face to this face, I can select both of those. I can right click, okay, and I can say connect. All right, so that's very powerful. So you can think about creating a handle or any other kind of geometry where you kind of need to have this ability here, okay? One thing that I also like is the ability to merge or align geometry to sketches. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna delete this one. And we will just go ahead in here and we'll create a sketch. And I'll hide this one for now. So a lot of people always ask, you know, yeah, that's nice that you can sculpt, but is there any way to make it somewhat parametric? And I tell them yes. So that's what I'm going to show you right now. Let's go ahead and offset a couple more planes. And this will just take me a second. And I'll grab this last one here. Okay, so if I were to go in here now and create a new freestyle feature, maybe this time, if I was to make a vase, for example, I could use a cylinder shape. And I'll rotate that around. Maybe I'll keep the bottom, and let's take this face and let's extrude that upwards to here. Okay, so I'm going to hide these planes. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to take this face and I'm going to delete it. So now we have a hole in the top, right? So what's neat is I can grab all these edges and I can right click and say align. And I'll just choose the align normal here. And I'll grab that sketch. And now you can see I've aligned that sketch or that freestyle mesh to that sketch, right? I can do the same thing here. I can grab the edges and I can align it to that sketch. And I can change that to normal position right there. And then same thing down here. I'm going to grab these guys. Didn't like that one for some reason here. There we go. Okay. So there it is. There's that vase that I've got here. So what's neat about this is now that I have that shape, I can go back in here to my sketches, for example, and modify these dimensions. So I'll grab that one, maybe change that to 80. And that mesh is going to update based on those changes that I make to the dimensions for those sketches. And there's sketch 2, same thing here. And I'll change that to maybe 125. So just wanted to show you guys that you also have a little bit of parametric control there by linking the mesh to sketches. And you can also do the same with planes. So if you have planes that are offset, you can align the freestyle geometry to those planes. Then if you modify the dimensions, the offset dimensions for those planes, the mesh will update as well. Okay. So now that I showed that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get rid of some of the stuff here that I created. All right. I'm going to turn this guy back on. Okay, so we talked about the primitive, bringing that in, selecting the faces and pushing and pulling. I can grab an edge as well, and I can push and pull that. I can grab the whole shape if I wanted to as well. I can scale it, so I can right click and say, you know what, this needs to be smaller. And I can grab, one face if I wanted to. I can grab the whole thing, make sure it's uniform and scale it like that. So there's a lot that you can do here. I'm going to go in here and start sculpting a little bit more and pushing and pulling and subdividing here. Now, one thing that's also nice is we have this crease option. So right now, it's basically showing the hardness of the entity. So right now, I have 100% hardness for this edge, for example. And you can see it up there at the top. But let's say, for example, I select the whole thing and I change this to soft. Maybe I'll just do the edges for this one. So let me do this and let me grab all the edges and I'll make that soft, right? So I can quickly get that soft look as well. So there's that guy, and when I zoom it up here to 100, you can see that it's less rounded, right? So we have that ability as well. We mentioned subdividing by selecting the edges and splitting like this, but we also didn't talk about splitting these faces. If I grab a face, I can also right click and I can say split. And this is really neat. Say, for example, I wanted an indentation for a button or something. I can grab a face, I can split it, maybe split again. And then from there, I can translate this downward and I get that dimple right there, right? So that might be a recessed spot, for a button, for example. Okay. You can also put a hole through this if you wanted to. So for example, I can grab that face and I can actually grab two faces, the top and the bottom, and subdivide both of those. So let's split both of those there. And then what's neat is if I right click and connect, it's going to put a hole through that. Okay. So again, the idea is that you're using this tool for the ideation process, for the concept development process, where you need a quick way to start creating some forms to get an idea for your product. And this is a very quick and easy way to do that once you get accustomed to using the tool. Of course, it's not easy at first, but with some time to play with it and get used to the tools, you can see it's pretty effective for creating these very complex shapes in a quick manner. Okay. Now, I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to move to a different stage in the process or in the design of this model. Okay. So this is the vehicle that I started to create here. I'm going to go ahead and go into this freestyle. So this is a different stage of the freestyle surface development. And here you can see I can start to get creative with what this door looks like. So maybe I want, maybe there's some venting here by the rear wheel, and I want to take this part of the vehicle, select those faces, start to move that inward a little bit. And I can have it taper, so I can bring this edge back out maybe, right, and say, hey, you know what? Let's gradually have it start to recess as it goes closer to the rear wheel there. So I'll pull that one back like that. Okay. Now, what's nice, what I also like is, so right now we are in this smooth mode, but there is a different mode right here, which is called box mode. And that shows you what the surfaces look like when they're not smooth. And this is a real nice way to align the vertices. So say, for example, this edge loop right here isn't aligned with the edge loop of that window. What I can do is I can grab the whole you just grab these and then I'll zoom in and grab these, right? So maybe they're not exactly aligned where I want them. I can then take this drag handle and shift it. So when I shift it over here to the right, now I'm going to zoom in and it's aligned. It's getting there, right? It's aligned to where the window is. So, and once your product starts to evolve and you have more geometry, right? The more faces or tessellation that you have in the model, sometimes it'll behave a lot more slowly and it won't respond as quickly as it did before when there was less geometry. So if you really need to make a quick adjustment and you don't want to wait for any lag time or anything, you can also go to this box mode and make changes here, then turn it off to see what that change looks like once it's smoothed out. So you can see here how quickly I can start to make changes to this model here. Then maybe if I want to start playing around with what a spoiler would look like in the back here, I can start to grab some geometry. And extrude it up like that. Maybe subdivide here. And extrude. Then of course we have to, grab some of this stuff and I can grab that face, bring that back here. So as you can see, it's great because I can start to model really quickly and get an idea for the vehicle as far as what's coming up as I'm designing it, because there are things that just come up on the fly when you're designing. If you don't capture that idea quickly, you may forget about it. So this is a nice way to start thinking about those things and being able to model it quickly. Extrude that. Yep. Yeah. So that's just something I thought about off the cuff. You know what I mean? So obviously, this isn't going to be exactly what you want, but this car is kind of futuristic in a way. So just think about some ideas there. So, and then same thing with the front end of the vehicle, right? There may be a design that you have in mind for the grille or the air vents down here. You can take this stuff, select that, right? I can inset it and say, hey, what would it look like if I took that geometry, subdivided it, started to kind of pull that back a little bit, right? So there's that. Okay, so now I probably should have canceled and not clicked OK, but you know what happens in a demo sometimes here. Okay. So I don't really want that change. So I'm going to go back. And I do have a lot here in the design exploration session, so it may take just a little bit of time here to undo that. Okay, so here we are. All right, so I'm going to go back to the end of the session to get to the final version of the vehicle here and just kind of show you what I did to share this geometry now. Okay, so what I wanted to do now was start working on the design of the door. So if you go to the model intent group here, go to publish geometry, you can select the geometry that you want to publish and share into a new part, for example. So I can select all these surfaces, then click OK, for example, to share that stuff. I've already done it, so we don't have to do it now. If I scroll down to my model tree here at the very bottom, there's the footer, and you can see if I select that publish geometry ID, it's going to show you that it's also selecting here in the graphics window. So you see the green there for the door. So once I publish that, I create a new part file, okay? And I'm going to go ahead and go back in time here. And you'll see there's this external copy geometry feature. All right. So this feature was created, when I copied that geometry in. So if I right click on this, and to do this, I went to the copy geometry feature up in the ribbon at the very top here in the get data group. But I'm going to go back into that feature, edit definition, kind of show so I have that LiveWorks part right here, but I actually broke the association. So I broke the link between the original freestyle car and this part right here that I created. So originally there was a link there, and you can see that there's the LiveWorks demo part. And then we also have the published geometry feature that's no longer there. That would show up there normally, but it's not because I broke that link, okay? So now I'm gonna go ahead and get to this point. So the door was copied into this part. So this geometry that you're seeing actually came from the freestyle mesh, okay? And also notice that in the model tree, I have a copy feature here, which is basically the edge of the freestyle mesh of the door here that you see highlighted in green. So there's copy 1, copy 2 on the right side, 3 up here, and 4 here. And the reason why I did that was because I wanted to recreate the door with the interactive surface design extension. So also known as a style feature, right? So up here in the model tree, in the surfaces group, there's style, okay? And I'm going to show you that here. So I already kind of have some of that fleshed out. So I'm going to hide the external copy geometry that I got from the original freestyle car. And this is the geometry that, you know, I created in the style tool, right? So I'm going to hide this for now and turn the external copy geom feature back on to show you kind of how I was thinking about being able to work on it. So this is the geometry from the freestyle mesh. And then what I can do here is go into the style tool and start creating curves on top of that mesh, right? So this environment is really cool. It's basically another surfacing environment, but it's self-contained in a feature. So this, when I create my curves in here, my curves and surfaces for the door, and I click OK and I exit out, it's going to show up like this as one feature in the model tree. So it's really cool in that way that, you know, you can have a ton of curves and surfaces, but, you know, you're not going to overpopulate your model tree, right? It's all going to be contained in this one feature. So that's pretty powerful. All right. So I'm going to go back into the style feature now. And what's nice about this too is anybody who's used Rhino or Autodesk products for surfacing, right? You can see that, you know, they typically would have this 4-view layout that we don't have normally in Creo, but we do get it here in ISDX. So this is nice. So when you're modifying curves, you can see what that modification is going to do in these different views, in the isometric view here, you know, side view, top view, front. So I can turn that on and off, which is real neat. And then I have my style tree here to the bottom left, and I have my ribbon at the top. So the nice thing about it is it's pretty self-explanatory. It really has, you know, your curves up here, your surfaces, and then you have some projecting, which is the, you know, drop curve, for example. There's curve by intersection, so you can intersect the surfaces and get a curve from that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize this freestyle mesh to create surfaces and first to create curves in the style tool here. So I have the free curve selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this boundary edge right here. And what's nice is even though I'm starting, you can see I have to hold shift and snap to that curve. I'm starting on that edge of the freestyle mesh, right? But if I hold shift and I hold the left mouse button down, I'm going to get that square. And that square tells me that I'm now creating a point on the surface of that freestyle mesh, because I want to match as closely as I can, right, to that design. So there's one point, and I'll create another point there. And again, this is on that mesh, okay? So there's the curve. You can take a look at it. You can see that it basically follows that surface. And I'm going to go ahead and create another one. Or, you know, I may want to just continue a curve off of this curve. So I can grab that endpoint, hold shift again and get that square, which means I'm on the surface. Grab that guy. And what's nice here too is, like you guys have seen before within Creo, is I can adjust the tangency of this curve. So right now you can see that I don't have any tangency really between the new curve that I just created and the first one that came before it. So I can grab this endpoint. We first edit on the curve. I can grab this endpoint and I can right click and I can say, hey, you know what, let's make it tangent to that line. Or, you know, maybe let's make it curvature continuous to that line, right? So we do have some freedom to do that. And I can also pull back the tangency length as well. If that's too much, right? I can start pulling that back. Okay. And then what I'll do is I'll just come in here again and I'll start to flesh this out even more. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna grab a point here, for example. And again, I'm gonna hold Shift and the left mouse button. Start sculpting on that surface. Here as well, like that. You know, and I may just continue this thing all the way to the edge, you know, like this. Okay. If I want to, I can also grab that point, right click and say, hey, you know what? I don't want it to be its own curve. I want to combine it into the original curve. So we just have one curve and not two there. So I can right click, grab that point, right click and say combine. And now it's just combined and it just combined with the original curve and it's all one curve now, which is pretty cool. I might take these and move this around a little bit. Okay, so now that I've defined those curves, you know, I may want to get the curves that go perpendicular to those. So I can create more curves here, maybe one here and here like that. If I want to add more points along the curve as well, that's easy to do. So if I'm like, hey, you know what, I really need another point, I need a midpoint of that curve to snap to the surface to make sure it's aligned correctly, I can do that. I can right click here and say add point or add a midpoint, and then grab it, hold shift and snap it to the surface. So it's aligned there. And again, you know, I may want to use the multiple views to go in here, go into my top view and adjust that, right? To make sure it's lined up correctly like that. Okay. Then I'll come down here and create another one. So I'll grab this guy here, snap to that endpoint, and then snap down here, right click, edit definition, add another point, and then snap that to the surface. So you can see it's a really quick way to start creating these curves. I can grab these soft points and move them along the edge. So it's still on that edge that I created. I can drag that point along it like that. Okay. Now again, I'm gonna have to adjust that tangency there at that point. So I'll grab that endpoint like that, and maybe I'll make that curvature to that and then pull back that handle a little bit to decrease the length to where I want it. All right, and then I'm gonna go in here and I'm gonna create one more on this side. So I'll go to my curve, you know, create one here like that. That should be good. And I'll create a new one here. Let me adjust that tangency again, like that. Pull it back to where I want it. All right. So, you know, this is going to need some more work, but the nice thing is that I can always come back in here if I need to and start to modify these curves and adjust them and get them where I want. So now that I have that, what I can do is I can create a surface from the curves that I created, right? So I can grab the boundary curves here. There's also this internal chains collector here. So once you grab the boundary for the surface that you're creating, you can also grab the internal chains to help articulate the shape even further. So I'll grab the internal chains collector and I'll grab this chain right here. But this one, you can see it's not connected. So I need to snap it to that boundary edge right there. And then now I should be good to create my surface here. right click, internal collector, grab that one and grab one. So there's the surface. You can see it closely matches the original freestyle mesh. If I hide that freestyle mesh, you can see just that surface created in the ISDX tool. And then same thing with that next surface, right? So I'm going to hide this freestyle mesh and then come in here, grab my surface feature, grab my curves, and then grab these internal curves here as well. All right. Can change that curvature if I want to. All right. So you can see how quickly you can start to flesh this out and how quickly it's going to match. All right. Now that I've showed you this, I'm also going to go move to one that's a little bit more complete than what we have right here. So I'm going to transition to this style feature. And you can see that a lot more work has been done. If I hide the freestyle geometry, take a look at the surfaces that I created with the ISDX feature. Now, one thing to note is before, remember that we were snapping the points to the geometry of that freestyle mesh, but when we're doing that, we're also creating an association, right? We're creating a parent-child relationship between this ISDX surface and the original freestyle surface. If we don't want that in this area, what we can do is we can select these square points that we're seeing here, and we can right click and we can say unlink. So right now it's linked to the surface, but if I want to unlink it, I can come down here and say unlink. So that way, I'm breaking that parent-child relationship between, that point and that freestyle surface that it was attached to. Okay. I can do that there. So anywhere on here where you see these squares, you can select them, right click, and you can unlink those like that. Okay. If I want to create a cut here, I can do that as well. So if I grab a datum plane here, for example, and let's actually make that the active plane. So if you want to sketch on a plane in the ISDX tool, you can say set active plane, select that plane, and then you could go in there and choose the planar curve creation and start sketching, right? So there's one right there. There's one here, and we'll create a couple more as well, like that. And like that. Okay, so now you can see that shape is on that back plane. And what I can do now is I can go to the drop curve feature, select my curves back here, and then select the surfaces I want to project onto. So I can grab that like that, and then click OK. And then once I have that dropped on there, you guys can probably guess what I'll do next. I can then go in there and try to, trim it out. So there's the surface trim right there. It's going to ask me for the quilts to trim. So I'll select these, and it's going to ask for my trimming curves like that. And it's going to ask me for the portion of the surface that I want to remove. So I'll grab both of those and then click OK. All right.
Bill, it's Deb. So I'm just watching the time here. There were 2 questions in the chat.
Sure.
So somebody, let's see, I can't see. Why are we recreating the freestyle surface in ISDX? And then, well, I don't know. Can you see the chat so I don't have to read it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sure. So So freestyle is just for conceptual work. Then you come back with ISDX or standard Creo functions to make the real geometry. You could work that way, but you can use the freestyle mesh itself. You can trim it, thicken it. So yeah, if you're able to get a quality surface from freestyle, you can use that for manufacturing. I just showed the recreating of the freestyle mesh with ISDX to show the functionality of, you know, being able to create curves on top of a mesh. So maybe you find a design, or somebody sends you a design and you import that in, it's OBJ or something like that. And you want to be able to use that mesh as a reference for creating other curves and geometry. You can do that. So just showing you a different way of working. You can manufacture from freestyle surfaces. I'm not sure, as I have not used freestyle. Yeah, so you can manufacture from them. So if I go ahead and click on cancel, you can see this is ISDX. There's my thicken. So there's my surface there. But if I switch to this part right here, you can see that I basically have a freestyle mesh here that's created, and I can, you know, I can select that mesh and thicken it, right? So there. So once you get this thing trimmed out to where you want it, you can thicken it, you can manufacture it. So yeah, you can most definitely use a freestyle mesh for manufacturing. All right. Any more questions? It's just more commonly used for concept development because of the speed in which you can work. But yeah, there's a lot you can do. I can trim this out if I want to and do all kinds of things to it to make it work for me. There's a bumper design. So this is a freestyle mesh of the bumper area. So if I go here and I just insert here, this is published geometry from the freestyle mesh, right? Front bumper. And if I want to, you know, I actually added a mounting surface in the back of this. So there's multiple plates in here and stuff for mounting and all that. So there's a lot that you can do with the freestyle surface. You just have to get used to learning how to use the tool. All right, Debs, that brings us to about 5 minutes before 2. Yeah.
Sorry, I had.
I just saw somebody mention intake, exhaust, manifolds, air boxes. But I am sandwiched between other components. Yeah, exactly. So kind of like before, when I was showing you creating that vase lofting between the sketches that I created in Creo. I could definitely see a use case for that. I know that we had somebody in here for training years back that took the class, and it was an intro class, but he was curious about freestyle. And when he saw how easy it was to kind of link the freestyle mesh to the curves, he was like, oh yeah, that would be a great way to, you know, create the exhaust for the motorcycle that I'm working on. So I can definitely see it used for that. If you have more questions and want to see the workflow more in depth, you can also reach me here at my email. So there's my name. My email is bdrosos@pdsvision.us. And of course, you can contact sales@pdsvision.us as well. And we have a bunch of content, videos and stuff on YouTube on our channel there. So.
Great. Yeah, so we've got 150 sorry, must be 12:57. So we probably should wrap it up, and any, you know, people can contact you that way. And like I said, if this recording turns out okay, I'll post it to our LinkedIn and Facebook groups and also to our website. But thanks so much, Scott and Bill. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
No problem, Deb. Thanks, guys, for coming on. Appreciate it.